Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable. KPMG ESG Conclave and Awards 2024 in partnership with CNBC TV 18. The second edition of KPMG in India's ESG Conclave and Awards 2024 brought together a diverse set of voices, including policymakers, investors, and business leaders, to honor companies for their leadership, innovation, and commitment to sustainable business practices. The event kicked off with the opening address by the CEO of KPMG in India and a special address by the Union Minister J.P. Nadda on the conclave's theme of green and inclusive growth.
The theme of our conclave today, on the front lines of responsibility for green and inclusive growth, could not be more apt. As we gather here, I call upon all of us to take a collaborative action to address the biggest challenge humanity has ever faced, and that's the climate crisis. This is not an option. It's an imperative, a call that resonates louder each day, impacting every industry, every business, and every individual. In terms of the transformation ahead, the transition towards sustainability is not just about tweaking what we already have. It's about fundamentally reshaping how we live, work, and grow. In our collective view, as KPMG, 5 pillars of our daily lives are already changing. 1, how we grow our crops and what we eat. 2, how we make and design products we consume. 3, how we generate, use, and store energy. 4, how we transport people, goods, and finally, how we live. Today, we have some of the most distinguished guests here, and you will resonate with me with one voice when I say that governments, businesses, consumers, and communities across the world are no longer asking for change. They are demanding it. Although we have a long way to go, it is heartening to see that my business colleagues and CEOs are proactively developing green products and supply chains and complying to the ESG regulations through robust governance practices and policy adoption. And that is why we are here today, to recognize and celebrate the visionaries and the companies that are driving this transformative shift. The ESG awards serve as a testament to those who have not only set the bar high, but have shown the world what it means to excel in innovation that is both sustainable and impactful.
Health and family welfare and chemicals and fertilizers sector are critical pillars of our economy. These sectors contribute to agriculture, manufacturing sector, and the various industries. However, these sectors are prone to most significant environmental and social challenges. Recognizing this, our government is committed to ensure that this sector leads the way in adopting sustainable practices. We are driving initiative to reduce the environmental footprints of chemicals and fertilizers industry by improving energy efficiency and supporting innovations in sustainable agricultural inputs. By reducing harmful emissions, waste, and moving towards more organic and bio-based fertilizers, we are encouraging an ecosystem that nurtures both the environment and the economic growth.
Now I'd like to invite our guest of honor for the evening, Maharashtra's Honorable Minister of Education and Minister of Marathi Language. Please join me in giving a big round of applause as we welcome Honorable Minister on the stage.
We have to achieve the target of our Honorable Prime Minister of making it zero pollution in 2070. And for that, achieving that target, we need to skill our manpower. We have to enlighten our student, our population, what is environment, what is sustainability. Sustainability is not just for the industry. Sustainability is for the society as well. We are bound to perform our duties in a way that the society becomes sustainable. And that should be our goal.
KPMG ESG Conclave and Awards 2024 in partnership with cnbc TV18. Business leaders from across industries came together for a panel titled Accelerating Green and Inclusive Growth to discuss ideas for developing business strategies and models to align with ESG goals.
Leadership at the moment is going through such a challenging times because you have profitability on one side, you're working across generations, so you have a very young generation which feels very strongly about ESG and sustainability and inclusion, and you have a set generation that has been doing business since such a long time. So at a leadership level, I can understand it's a lot to work with. Amitabh, I will start with you. What can't be measured cannot be improved. The frameworks that we have at the moment, whether forced on companies by way of regulation, domestic and international, or the kind of reportage that needs now, is that enough? Is that the right framework? And is it really able to measure the ESG efforts or the sustainability and impact efforts that the companies are making?
So I think, first of all, as you rightly put it, the right approach should actually be a societal approach. I've had the privilege of being on the board of Tata Sons and a trustee of Tata Trust for many years, and I think they were exemplars when it came to doing the right thing on many norms. And if you just simply look at how they were rewarded, whether the brand premium that they commanded, whether it was how they were able to attract talent, because they did the right thing, that was a great example that even when norms did not exist, there was a premium for doing the right thing. And so in my mind, first of all, doing the right thing gets rewarded, whether it be by the markets or it be by other stakeholders, consumers, talent, or anyone else, regulators certainly. Now, unfortunately, what we've come to realize is that unfortunately only works for leaders. The distribution of companies is a bell curve, and there are a lot of followers and there are a lot of laggards, and where norms are really needed is to basically push the followers towards the leaders and to penalize the ones who are laggards. And I think that's where I think the answer to your question lies. I think the regulations that have kicked in, I'm personally a fan of them. People generally go kicking and screaming to regulations, but eventually they get imbibed, and I think eventually they become societal norms. I think we are in that phase where people are beginning to embrace them gradually. SEBI, for example, with their ESG framework, are encouraging the first 250 companies, leading to the next 750 companies, and therefore 1,000 companies to embrace these norms. I think these will then become templates for the rest to follow. And so in some cases it's becoming an imperative, and in some cases it's becoming a good to have. But I can tell you without doubt that people are beginning to embrace these initially gradually and now increasingly so. And I think that's something we must recognize.
Arun, taking a segue from there, we heard that green technology comes at a cost. And for green technology to be able to be put in place, you need the right infrastructure, you need government's support, you need penetration of facilities to the absolute last milestone. What are the challenges there? Even if a company, say, has a mandate What are the partnerships that you're looking at? And is that where big conglomerates can be a little more pushy when it comes to asking for those infrastructural changes that perhaps may not just be great for you, but also for other companies?
If you make anything as a mandate, people tend to comply. If you make it part of profit, people tend to adopt. Any ESG initiative, one has to think that it is a part of profit. It has to be. In our case, when we signed up for round-the-clock renewable power, something that very few people have dreamed to do, that it will be a combination of solar, wind, battery backup and pump hydro storage, and putting manufacturing facilities of 450 megawatt directly into round-the-clock renewable. We did it, of course, ESG, but it makes profit for us because for next 25 years, my power purchase agreement power cost is fixed. Then I have done the power cost in dollar terms because I sell my product in dollar terms. It gives me natural hedging. Third, I am at a location where coal mines are not there, so I am getting power at a cheaper rate, of course. Find out for yourself in the sustainability agenda things that give you more profit, adopt them first, so that there is a culture, as you mentioned. The culture in the organization is ESG is not a cost, but it adds to profit. Last but not the least, recently I did a session, entire organization-wise, something that most organizations fear to address, on toxicity at workplace. And we brought it up in the table for 3 hours. Every individual, including myself, had to admit where I think I was toxic.
Wow.
Right. And then give that confidence. If you say that I will only do diversity, I will not remove toxicity which has been there for hundreds of years, then diversity cannot thrive. So you have to remove toxicity from the workplace, then allow people to thrive with their own thoughts, because thoughts don't come if they're afraid of what will be the impact. So I think everything is profitable. At the end of the day, my numbers have gone up, my cost has come down. I am making 45, 47, 48% EBITDA. So I'm happy.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think that is one of the things that most organizations and people on the floor need to understand, especially taking from the last part of your answer, which is recognizing your own biases, your own unconscious biases. And once you are recognizing those biases, that you have them, and that's what they say, biases are all right to have. How do you bring them, and whether you let them affect your work is the main question. But having spoken about the people practices, Namrata, I am very intrigued when you meet stakeholders, when you meet industry leaders. What are one of the most I would say, what would be the top 3 challenges? Let's look at that. When we talk about going green, when we talk about these initiatives, and when we talk about changing mindsets of people who are working within the company, how does that happen? How do you decide that this is what the company is putting aside as a short-term profit, and we are looking at a long-term strategy which is about going green? And how do you make that balance and then have everybody on board who is trying to get those numbers, who has those targets in their heads, on the same page about a strategy that may not be getting them those numbers in the short term, but it's a long-term game?
Thank you so much, Mugdha. That's a really important question. That's because all of us can sit in boardrooms and create targets. So a net zero target for a particular date sounds really exciting. But then when you start creating your sustainability reports, you realize that year after year, the metrics need to change. So if you've started reporting and if you've taken a target, how do you make sure that you actually achieve it? So the first 2 years, we go in euphoria saying we'll do it. But then if people at the mass level are not aligned, how are you going to achieve it? Which basically means you need to translate those targets into KPIs for people all across the board. They also need to get aligned with what your buyers are actually going to buy from you, so that you actually support it in the context of products and services that the organization is creating. So any net zero strategy is really good on paper, but it needs to be driven by people, it needs to be driven by green products, it needs to be driven by processes, and obviously we need technology so that it can help us scale.
Dipali, you are in an industry where you are likely to work with SMEs, where you're likely to work with the unskilled labor, where the onus of educating is also lying on you. How challenging is it then, when we talk about scope 3, how challenging is it to find the right partners? And the partners that you have had for so long, pushing them in a change that you as a company are trying to see. How challenging is that?
So let me first tell you one thing. We've been talking about the ESG framework. We're talking about the structuring. I think ESG is a culture. ESG is something that has to be led from the front by the CEO of the company. And I think let me just put that very, very clear, because that's where the impact will start happening. Now, when you're talking about the scope 3, first let me give you a framework of what we do at Welspun Living Limited. So when I talk about my entire supply chain, we start with cotton, we start with the farmers, right? We are doing projects with farmers on better cotton initiatives, which actually consumes lesser water than the regular cotton. So that whole traceability from the farm to the shelf is something that we're working with, along with the blockchain, where you also get the suppliers into the code. When you're talking about scope 3, I think the very interesting and the important aspect is the scope 1 and scope 2 is easier, but the scope 3 is a very challenging thing, and I think people here would agree to that how do you get, that whole ecosystem of SMEs who work with you into the fold? For us, let me tell you, a lot of our ancillary vendors work just 2 kilometers closer to our factories, so that is lesser carbon emission. We, along with, as I spoke about blockchain, we also have a program where we actually measure the amount of consumption of energy that they're consuming, water they're consuming, and the other governance aspects as well. So we've created a framework for them as well. So that actually is a measurement index. For us at Welspun, we have an ESG compass actually, and we report back. So we have made a 5-year plan for us at Welspun Living, where we report back how much water positive are we, how much green energy are we using, how much social impact are we doing, how much is going to the landfills. So that is kind of a thing that we continue to report back to the board. And we have a board of independent directors for ESG. Our BSR report comes in annually as well.
Wonderful. Manish, climate resilient development is what we talk about, but there are a lot of companies, their product or the service that they offer is of the nature that by its very functionality, it can't be climate resilient, right? In that case, how do companies make a commitment to cut down on their carbon footprint or overall business strategies? How can they factor in these climate resilient points and goals into their product line, which perhaps by its existence is going against the norms of climate resilience?
A hard challenge, but I think we need to, at least at the company, we go back and look at some of the decisions we've taken maybe almost 2 decades back. It was 2006 when it was not really pushed by any regulation that we would remove lead from all our products that we sold to consumers. That legislation came in 2017, but in 2006, company which was a lot smaller than what it is today, took the bold step that we would do this within a matter of 18 months, and we began development in-house. We completed the work and we absorbed the cost. We did not increase the product cost, we did not increase anything. And I don't think the initiative was sort of grounded on the pillar of ESG. It was grounded on the pillar that we would do right things for our customers, and it would be unsafe to continue to work in our older ways and then call ourselves that, we are a great company, or et cetera, just won't make sense. Next, I think the government has categorized us as a red category industry, which means we are sort of governed by them as an industry that should watch out for the pollutants that we did. And so we began the journey of saying that we would not let out any industrial waste outside of our factory boundaries. And that sort of started the wave of looking at how we could recycle product, how we could measure things that we would recycle. And born out of that drive was the need to have closed loop systems. Closed loop systems required regular monitoring, and so automation came in. And so we went to the first fully automated factory was designed in 2006. But I think we went to factories that had a factory level material loss of 2.2, 2.3%. We today run factories which have a factory level material loss of 0.4. Now, if you look at that, it's a great savings for the environment, all of those things. But that 2.1% material cost in an industry where material cost is 60% of our top line is a significant saving on the bottom line. Just like Mr. Mishra was saying earlier, I think it made business sense, economic sense to do this, but was wonderful for the environment. And even more so, we could go back to government and say, look, give us permission to put up larger plants because we don't harm the environment in that sense. So I think it took an entire wave out there. So small waves convince people that, look, this makes business sense for us. And then go on to do bigger things, and that's today become the only way to do things.
Fantastic, Manish, and that was a great note to end this first panel discussion on. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time and all the insights. Thank you so much.
KPMG ESG Conclave and Awards 2024 in partnership with cnbc TV 18.
Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.